All right, so let's go ahead and get kicked off here. So I want to welcome everyone to the People Strategy Forum podcast. We're a show that guides leaders to elevate their overall workforce. So we provide those practices and guidance for you to improve your overall workforce experience. We believe that people are at the heart of successful organizations, and team members' well-being, rewards, and career development are essential to a happy, healthy, and highly productive workforce. So this show actually discusses practical and effective leadership strategies for top executives, senior professionals, and talent managers. So today, as part of our regular host, and we have Howard Niswitz, and he's a senior seasoned compensation advisor and also strategic HR advisor as well, who has over 30 years of experience in a lot of large companies. And I've been privileged to have him help me and mentor me in my practice as well. So thank you, Howard, for that. And also we have Shar Miller, and Shar Miller is a human resource consultant, business owner, and chief HR officer of Rocky Mountain Health Advocates. I know Shar as a serial entrepreneur because she has a couple of her own businesses as well, such as Mountain and Sea Career Strategies and Mountain and Sea Health Advocacy. So she reached out to her for those pieces of information there as far as career counseling and health advocacy. She's known as HR with a Heart. So I'm very fortunate to have Shar on as well. Thank you, Shar. And then myself, my name is Sam Reeve. I am the founder of Comp Team, and we're a global compensation and talent management consulting company. And I focus my efforts on preparing small to mid-sized, rapidly growing talent-centric organizations on implementing competitive pay programs and those talent programs that help them, such as career architecture and so forth. And so I've been in this business for over 25 years now, and have helped companies across 23 countries and 5 continents. So I love it. So it's a lot of fun. But we're here today to introduce you to Julie Noonan. This is going to be a great thought-provoking conversation that will challenge your perspectives and inspire meaningful change in your organization. So today we're going to be talking about actually, let me just go over. I'm going to say a little bit more about Julie. She has a genuine love for people, and she has a talent for idea generation. And she's been on several podcasts. We were just talking something like 30 different podcasts so far, Julie. It's
Yeah.
great. So what truly sets her apart is her unwavering commitment to creating real relationships and understanding the needs that are beneath the surface. So with years of executive consulting and expertise and dedicating to learning and growth, our guest is here to share her expertise in reverse mentoring. So it's a topic that promises to revolutionize the way that you approach leadership and foster collaboration in your organization. So without further ado, let's dive into the conversation and with that incredible Julie Noonan. Thank you so much for joining us on the People Strategy Forum, Julie.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm just really, really excited to be here to share this message.
Well, what we do to get things kicked off is would just love to hear a little bit more about your experience and how you got into consulting and helping the people that you help.
Okay. So I started, okay, I'll go way back. I started out as an English major. So, nothing whatsoever to do with anything, honestly. But one of the things that I figured out once I decided that I didn't want to be a college professor with the suede on my sleeves, and I wanted to actually make some money and not eat macaroni and cheese forever, was that the study of English literature really was the study of human behavior under crisis. And that's when I figured out that I loved change management. I loved being able to watch people, to intuit, oh, okay, this is why they're acting that way. This is how, and I could intuit what they were going to do next. And I could also figure out, okay, how can I help them engage with this change? How could I help them have a better outcome? And so I got into change management relatively quickly, coming up through the learning and development organization. So went into leadership development fairly quickly after that. Got into, and I started out in corporate America, went through banking industry, tons of mergers and acquisitions later, during the 90s and early 2000s. Then went into consulting. And through consulting, I was very blessed to be able to, because of consulting, I got exposed to so many different companies, so many different sizes of companies, also government, private companies, public company or public entities, nonprofits, you name it, and had that experience of being able to see how those different entities operated. So I was able to say how blessed I was in just experiencing all of those different cultures.
Hmm.
After my consulting days, I actually went into state government for 5 years, and then I turned 55 and got laid off. That was my first turning point in my life when I was 55. And when you're 55, you're turning a little gray and you're a woman and you get laid off, you hit ageism face to face. All of a sudden, there aren't so many recruiters calling you. And so I thought to myself, okay, I have hired plenty of independent contractors. I've hired plenty of affiliates to come in and help me. Heck, I do nothing with compensation, by the way. I've hired plenty of compensation experts because God forbid anybody let me near their numbers. So certainly somebody would hire me to come in and do change management for them as an independent contractor. So I put out my shingle. I did several projects, but then as soon as I had the opportunity to go back into consulting, I jumped at the chance. So I went back into a full-time consulting gig and COVID hit. I got laid off again.
Oh boy.
At 57. And at that point, I said, you know what? I've got to stand in my power. I have to take control of my own life. And that's when I formed my company as it stands right now. And I have never been happier. I've never been more successful in my life. And I am so happy and so surrounded by support. I can't say enough about being independent at this point. So that's where I am at this point.
Yeah.
I think that you're an inspiration, Julie. I think that you, I have a Facebook group called Freedom from Corporate, and it's very scary as also a person that's been laid off before a couple times. And it's very scary to become an independent contractor, consultant, entrepreneur, etc. So I'm very proud of you, and I think that you're an inspiration. And congratulations for making that successful and living your dream.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm trying to inspire younger women, particularly women, to stand in their power and literally give it a shot. It's very hard, but it's very worth it.
Yeah, agreed. Especially, during times of such change. There's so much of things that are going on in the world that creates instability, and whether it's the economy or inflation or the job market going up and down, it's nice to be able to at least be in control of your own. And so yeah, I can understand the appeal there for sure. But what I would love to dig into a little bit more is you mentioned that you did a lot of M&A activity in your career. And part of our discussion today is kind of reverse mentoring and so forth. So what have you learned about the M&A environment and how different generations flex in to that particular environment?
Okay. M&A, mergers and acquisitions, that was a little earlier in my career, before reverse mentoring, actually. But so I haven't worked M&A with reverse mentoring. So I want to be a little cautious in that regard. From a mergers and acquisition perspective, what I saw that was most successful is when we went in as change managers, as change leaders. The most successful mergers and acquisitions projects that we went in on, and I was on the due diligence teams, were the ones where we really actively had leaders that paid attention to the cultures. The ones that simply paid attention to the numbers, that simply paid attention to the, to the systems, to the logistics, to, your basic business operations type things, and really didn't pay attention to the people, didn't really pay attention to the communities in which some of these businesses, they were banks mainly, operated. The deals that they had with their communities, they really, when they didn't pay attention to those cultures, they really stumbled. One of those, in particular, it was a bank in the Northeast and a bank in the South. The culture clash was like, Hiroshima. It was not pretty at all. The numbers looked beautiful. The systems looked like they were going to be gorgeous. Even the people at both banks, at least at the leadership level, looked like a marriage in heaven. The problem was the communities. The community that the Northern bank serviced wanted nothing to do with a Southern bank. They didn't want that friendly yeehaw. They didn't want the Southern banker in their business. They didn't want that. And so that was something from a risk assessment perspective that was missed in the due diligence effort that really caused that merger to not go well. And it was it probably added a good 2 years to before that evened out. And the toll on the people, the employees within that bank, was horrendous. It was really horrendous. And as a change manager, it was very, very stressful.
I grew up in financial services, Julie, and have witnessed that firsthand, because you go through quite a number of mergers and acquisitions, and that culture piece and the engagement piece is so often overlooked. And I've seen horrendous, within a year, losing, key people that we should have been able to retain. But the focus is always on, the numbers, the logistics, and they missed the whole people part of it.
Absolutely. You probably know what merger I'm talking.
I do.
So when we think about that and just change management overall, how can we use change management and also the different generations in helping with that in a reverse mentoring? How does that come into play?
So now, right now, especially after COVID, one of the things that I'm seeing, and I studied, the generational divide for it's been around for quite a while, obviously. People started talking about that. I know that I gave a presentation in Austin to the Organization Development Network, I believe it was, back in like 2007, about the generation gaps, and the number of generations in the workforce. So it's not a new topic. What happened though with COVID it just brought the different values of the generations to the forefront, because COVID accelerated the younger generation's values. It with remote work in particular, it wasn't an option anymore. So all of the younger generations, and actually me too, you know, I've always been 13 in my mind. Yes. So I've always identified as a younger generation. So, you know, remote work, I have always thought, why do I have to go in the office? So for a lot of people, remote work was something that should have been happening already. For a lot of people, diversity and inclusion had been talked about for many years. I was trained as an HR person in a large bank. I was trained in the early 2000s with a fairly stringent diversity program. So these things had been coming up, but they were slow. Work-life balance, it was slow. COVID put it right in front of us, and it accelerated those conversations for our good, I think. But boy, did it hit some people in the face. And so when I started to get into my practice during COVID, when I was talking to my clients, and when I was talking large corporations as well as individuals who I provide executive coaching for, a lot of times what was coming up was, I don't know how to deal with this other generation. Whether I was speaking with high potentials who didn't know how to deal with the boomers and the early Xers, or vice versa. I don't know how to deal with this other generation. And so the generational conversations were bubbling up faster than they had previously, because it was kind of right back in our faces. And so that's when I kind of stumbled back upon, how am I going to help these people? And that's when the idea of reverse mentoring kind of crept back into my psyche. And I started thinking about it differently. I don't know how much longer you want me to go on about it, or if you want to direct me in a direction here.
No, I'm just wondering, when you're in that experience, when you're guiding organizations, what are the main issues that you see between the different generations that are been common recently?
So I'll give you a good example. I'm working with a very large pharmaceutical organization. And I started working with them 2.5 years ago, right after I started my company. And so the very first thing that I noticed, and this was a new group, and they had a contingent of a legacy kind of group. They're a knowledge management group. So they were made up of some corporate librarians. And then on top of that, they have some researchers who were more like scientific researchers. And these individuals were young, out of Ivy League schools, very innovative, very computer savvy, technology savvy, interested in artificial intelligence, machine learning, the whole 9 yards. Okay. This was 2.5 years ago. So it was even before Chat GPT and all this other stuff. So I'm looking at this group, and they were now under one team, and they were supposed to be collaborating on a new knowledge sharing platform, building it for the organization. They had no idea how to work together. None whatsoever. So thus started the they, them finger pointing. I mean, how classic is this, right?
Right.
So the first thing that I did was just get to kind of know all of them. And start to just watch and listen for their perspectives on things without asking any questions, without passing judgment, and start to look in on their project meetings, listen for those cues, those judgmental kind of cues. And finally, I said, why don't we do some team building? And this was all virtual, unfortunately, because we weren't allowed to get back. This was during COVID, we couldn't get together. And so I found an instrument called the Barrett Personal Values Assessment, $20. Okay, you can't beat that. So I had all of them take this assessment. I compiled the results, anonymized it, and then as a team, we went through it together. And we focused first on where this whole team had values that were the same. And we went through and we discussed with these values that are all the same. And this is the mission of the organization. And this is the mission of the group. How are we as a team going to accomplish this mission? Now, once we had our goals set out, then we started talking about what are the biggest differences and how are we going to get around those.
I see.
After that, it was fine.
Yeah. So the big thing was you use those values assessment to find common ground, and it started causing some connection there, and maybe we're not so different after all, type of thing. And then
it's not rocket science, but yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, all of that, I mean, we can see it's easy to see the differences in people when we're talking to one another. And
Right.
The problem is first starting developing the relationship with one another to where we can talk about those differences in a safe space, right? Where we can have that collaborative conversation. So what are the most common challenges that you see that you in that transition?
Mm-hmm. Well, once we get the common differences, what happens after that is they begin to allow themselves to have some vulnerability with each other. Some on a personal level, they'll make those personal connections. And at that point, then I was able to identify, okay, we have a couple of these individuals over here on the boomers. I'll just call it the boomer side or the older side. The boomer side, who are very, very uncomfortable with technology. They don't want to say that out loud because for them, it's embarrassing. They work in a digitally enabled, it's career limiting, or it could be. And so, I was able to identify that. And then on the other side, I've got individuals who have never been exposed to a political situation, an organization where you need to know how to maneuver politically, how to position yourself so that you can be seen. And there are some cultural situations here where being seen is not necessarily a cultural positive. The culture that some of these individuals come from, humility is a big factor. And so we've got some learning opportunities on both sides. So I was able to then match some of these individuals up into reverse mentoring partnerships. I would sit in on the first sessions to make sure that they understood what the partnership should look like. This wasn't a performance review situation.
Right.
And it was completely confidential. So none of it should go back to either one of them's boss. I was not there to be a tattletale to the boss, none of that. It wasn't a project review. It was literally, you, Joe, tell you, Mary, what you would like to work on and vice versa. And you help each other. That's it. And it works beautifully.
Was there a written agreement, or what was the mechanics of how you actually made it happen?
I allowed them to decide that,
Okay.
because basically for some people, once it's a written down agreement, it becomes able to be passed along to HR, and it was, it was intimidating that way. So a couple of the teams decided they would write it down, just because they wanted they wanted to be able to be reminded and accountable. And a couple of them didn't. And they were fine. I was fine with either way they wanted to do it. I left it in their hands. I didn't take the written papers or anything. And at the end, the only metric that I had was, at the end, I asked them if they had found value in the relationship or not. That was my metric.
Yeah.
Well,
And
Julie,
unanimously, yes. So that was good.
Julie, I've been in charge of learning and development departments, et cetera, too. I love this concept. I think this is fantastic. I'm curious. So if just for my personal clarity, so when you talked about, let's say, AI, a boomer, no offense to any boomers out there, might not be comfortable with AI. Hey, I got to figure out AI. I got to train too, and I'm an Xer. By the way, the Xers are the forgotten people. But anyway, if you're an Xer, you know what I mean. But then I do know, like, Gen Zs and Gen Ys, and you're also spot on, because there's zero tolerance for bureaucracy and, well, I've worked here for 30 years, and you don't know what you're talking about because I have history with this company. I've been here forever. And that's a real turnoff to younger generations. And we've been hearing words, the quiet quitting generation, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And to me, that sounds like labeling a generation.
Oh, yeah.
And so what I love about this, though, is, yes, we all have value, right? We all have value. Believe me, I don't care what age we are. I love the fact that you're aligning. We have value and we can align our values. I love that.
Yes.
So here's my question for you then. So does the reverse mentoring technique, is that only for colleague to colleague standpoint, or do you utilize it for the management employee different levels as well, or is it mainly more of a colleague?
I do not I do not put manager and subordinate. No. And the reason why is because there's already a dynamic there that doesn't work.
Right.
It
Makes
doesn't
Right.
sense.
So if I had somebody, let's say, for instance, my client here, who is an executive vice president, if my client here wanted to engage in reverse mentoring, I would find someone that is not his subordinate. I would find someone in another person's group who would like to engage, and I would make that agreement between them.
So, for example, I've also worked with large systems. So I'm just going to use some cliche. Let's just say it's a chief HR officer and the chief financial officer, the two different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I was often told that HR people really need to improve our business acumen when it comes to finance and money and numbers. And you know how us HR ladies are, or people and men. in anybody. Is that what you're recommending? Is that type of mentoring situation, which would help to reduce the silo effect, which often happens, particularly in large organizations where the seniors are not really partnering and supporting one another. What do you think about that?
Um, Not necessarily, because really what I'm talking about is generational
Okay.
first
Generational. Okay.
and skills second. Yeah, because if it's generational first, then sure. I mean, if one of your skills is I want to learn more about, finances, then maybe I would partner you up with somebody that is maybe like a junior person in accounting. I could do that. I certainly
Okay.
wouldn't put a CFO and a head of HR together.
I see.
That's
Okay.
just asking for
Yeah.
well,
So
a
it's
headache.
Yeah.
so does it help build more of those cross-functional relationships in organizations?
Exactly. And the reason why I'm saying that is because what the different one thing that I was saying with Sam before everybody got on was, each generation is brought up with certain things. So I was brought up as a boomer. I'm the last of the boomers. Okay. So I was
I'm
brought up
behind
as
you. I'm right behind you.
I was brought up as one of the last boomers. I was brought up with a very high degree of competition. So we were brought up to compete with everybody. We did not collaborate. We, especially women, we literally had knives in our hands and would stick them in each other's backs to crawl up the ladder.
It's quite a visual.
So seriously, so
Yeah.
collaboration,
Oh, it's very true. Very
I
true.
had to learn to collaborate. How did I learn to, I mean, to me, when the very first thing, when I think of collaboration, I think it's going to take longer and it's going to be messy. And I sigh, I don't have time to collaborate. That's my visceral reaction to collaboration.
It takes mental energy. Yeah.
It takes mental energy. I'll just do it myself. That is literally my first reaction. Now, generations behind me were brought up collaborating. They have, their first reaction is, well, let me go and get a group of people and we'll figure this out.
Right.
That's their first reaction. So
Yeah.
I don't want to put somebody like me with another person like me, because we'll just fight with each other.
Yeah. No, I get
Because
it.
I'm going to be right and they're going to be right.
Mm-hmm.
So I would rather, now I've learned to collaborate and I really, really enjoy collaborating now. But I know that I can use either skill depending on what needs to happen in the moment. And that's called being well-rounded. And that's what we want to teach them how to do as well.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I mean, I see that in my children.
Yeah.
They have a different mindset. Especially when it comes to sports, right? So they'd rather be in a team sport than an individual sport. They want to they're more social than I ever was. So it's very interesting. So Andre is just asking a question here. So does collaboration take an awareness and acceptance of being interdependent? I believe I asked that question. Yeah.
I think we are learning more and more and more how interdependent everything is. we are moving as a culture from being this fierce, independent cowboy, entrepreneurial, bar the doors, I'm going to get what I want kind of culture, to now, let's do this all together, kumbaya kind of stuff. We're on this pendulum, right? We're on the kumbaya side right now. Will it swing back the other way? I don't know. But the bottom line is it takes both. Sometimes it takes the person just plowing through to get something done.
Mm-hmm.
And it also takes, while you're doing that, the recognition that, okay, I might be plowing through, but what am I leaving in my wake?
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes, okay, we all have to go together or this isn't going to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
I have to have 8,000 people's opinions, change management 101 to make this happen.
Yeah.
So it's all interdependent, and it's not an either or. It is a both situation.
So going back to when you formed these reverse mentoring groups, these people that are getting together, one of the critiques I've heard about this particular process is that, you miss a meeting and then it all falls apart. So, meaning that people they just stop meeting with one another and they don't feel like they forget about it. So what do you do to keep this alive and to have some accountability here?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me put it this way. When it dies, it dies. One of the things we need to let go of is measuring success by how long we can keep something alive. If it's not working, it will die. So the bottom line is, what is my measure of success? My measure of success is the mentoring or the reverse mentoring relationship will last as long as each person is getting value out of it.
Excellent.
And that's as long as it needs to last.
Nice. I love that, Julie.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah. And of course, I think that it's always important to make sure that the door stays open where people can feel like they can talk to one another. But driving value, creating value is what this is all about, right?
Right. And I think a lot of times, I love data, and data is, the big thing right now. Data is the king and everybody wants data. Well, let's just make sure we're looking at the right data. The right data is not how many weeks did this relationship last. That's not the right data. The right data is what value, or did this person realize value out of this relationship? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
That's the data.
But in your role as a coach to leadership, and you bring this up as a tool to help with a particular situation, and then so I imagine there's a time where you say, it sounds like we need to have another reverse mentoring session that we need to do, so based on something that happens in the future, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
But
maybe you need another person.
Yeah. All right, but as far as measuring, because that's another thing is leaders to say, well, how do we know if we're getting anything out of this? And what is the thing that you can show leadership that this is working for an organization? This has had value to the organization.
Mm-hmm. Really and truly, it depends on the competencies and the goals that each person decides that they need out of the relationship. So it could be something as simple as level of comfort with AIML. I'm just using that as an example because one of my people is really, that's one of their goals. I want to increase my level of comfort with AI ML. So I said, okay, why don't we just use a scale 1 to 10? How comfortable are you right now before we start this thing? They put themselves at a 4. So at the end or at the middle, or, whenever we decide we want to measure it again, we'll measure it. And then when we go to talk with the leadership about how are you making progress, not only will the leader actually talk to the person and say, how are you feeling about it? We'll actually have some measures. Maybe they'll be up at a 6 or maybe they'll be up at an 8. But they'll also be able to say, yes, I'm feeling more comfortable. Or now when I think about, joining a project with AI ML involved, I feel like that I can add value to that project.
Mhm.
So, it's not always about numbers.
Yeah. Can you walk us through, I know that we talked a little bit about the workshops and grouping people and so forth, but for our listeners out there, I mean, can you give us tell us a story about where this was really transformational for one of your clients and how it felt for them?
Yeah. Okay. So I have my second client pair. One one of them, okay. He used to be a COBOL programmer. Okay, so a little bit older than me. And his claim to fame was building a system that was kind of the first of its kind at an organization 20 years ago. And he inherited a group of individuals that were very cutting edge. And he was charged with leading them to create a system that basically is going to do the same thing that the system he created did back then, but doing it today with the whole pile of data. And he was nervous about it because they were coming up, they were all in a huddle. They were coming up with lots and lots of ideas. They were using some terminology that he wasn't quite familiar with, although he's a learner. He was trying to keep up with the latest and greatest. He hadn't been in school for years. And he shared some of his hesitation with me. And I said, well, if you're up for it, why don't we see if we can get the project leader on his team who does not report to him. This is a project manager from a vendor. So no reporting relationship. Why don't we see if he would be willing, to engage in a reverse mentoring situation? And he was, with no fee.
Yeah.
Yay for me. And so, we agreed just for a short period of time, just to kind of help him get his confidence back up, engage in this reverse mentoring relationship. So he had very specific goals. And so he was able to do that. And so they met individually once a week after the actual project meeting. And this person focused on helping him get up to speed. And what he did for that person was help him, because he was relatively young in his position at the consulting company. and he had been in consulting. My client had been in consulting. He was actually helping him with his executive presence and account executive. He was in a role of account executive, and it was his first time. So he was helping him with his account executive role. So it was kind of an interesting dynamic, and it went swimmingly well. They were both very happy at the end of it.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we're getting towards the top of the hour, so I do want to just take a pause right now and recognize our next week's speaker. And so next week we're going to be speaking to Natalie Davis about employee safety. And this is not just having a safe workplace in the physical sense, but also in the mental sense. You know, how do we ensure that we're preventing bullying from happening in the workplace, and ensure that there's people can speak freely, and people are be able to do their best work without the fear that can happen in some places. So I'm really excited to have some time with Natalie. So Julie, just as a question, and we look about having a safe workplace, and I know that this is something that you have some expertise in when you're putting people together and creating those matches for this reverse mentoring. What kind of questions would you have for Natalie in this situation?
Oh, wow. I have a great one, actually. How does a leader who is unclear about their directions make for an unsafe workplace?
Yeah.
Because I
very
have a
important.
leader who doesn't understand why his people are afraid of him.
Definitely
Yeah,
good stuff to bring
that's
up.
a good one. Yeah, narcissism maybe.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We'll definitely bring that up with is it Natalie? Is that how you pronounce Natalie? Okay, it's just spelled a little bit different, but we'll definitely bring that up. I want to know how to handle that too.
That'll be a great conversation.
How often you get dead silence or no hands going up when they say, who has questions? Or
Yeah, it's like if your employees are completely quiet, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, one other thing, Julie, that I'd like to mention is that we were talking about tools earlier, and one of the tools that we often interface as one of our sponsors is the TMA method. And it's like usually I can get to the slide. I'm having problems, but this is a way to learn a little bit about each other. I mean, so basically, it's one of those assessment tools that you can start with, and it's also a whole program and integrated talent management. But one of the big pieces that you can use is in the reverse mentoring is have a conversational piece to get to have that discussion and start to know one another, talk to one another about some of those commonalities and some of those things that may do you different. And so the TMA method is a great way to make that happen. Also, one thing that I just want to make sure that I bring up is my new book on the workforce experience. I mean, this is actually available now on Amazon. If you want to go out to Amazon and take a look at this, when we talk about a lot of the different things of how to enhance the employee experience at companies to better attract, retain, and motivate the workforce. And reverse mentoring is definitely a way where we can build more teaming and increase that workforce cohesion. So go out there and take a look at that. So
Wonderful.
now, yeah, and Julie, just wanted to bring up this one other question we had from our audience. Is basically, how did you get started in doing what you do? I mean, how did you actually go through the process, get clients, and starting your consulting practice?
Oh, I did the easiest thing. I basically circled back to everybody I had ever known and said, okay, I just hung out a shingle. You all know what I can do. If you know of anyone or if you have a need, I'm available and would love to talk to you. And I had takers right away. So, don't neglect your network, even when you're fully employed. Don't neglect that network. Get on LinkedIn, make sure your profile's up to date. Get your badges, keep learning, and keep yourself up to date.
Great advice.
I give my career coaching clients that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We get comfortable in our positions, even if we've been there for 13 years.
Oh, yeah.
And then one day, you get the pink slip, maybe something gets changed. It's out of our control, and we have to have that up to date. So good advice.
Yeah. And don't take it to heart if you get laid off. It happens. It happens, and it's not you. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
Just remember that you are valuable to somebody always.
Right.
Absolutely. Because, there's so many outside factors and business changes and shadow departments, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh,
It's not,
absolutely.
you and I know this. But it is devastating if you get laid off. It is.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm glad. I like to hear you say that, and that you're a great support to those individuals. So
Yeah.
We all should be, anybody that's laid off, support somebody else that's been laid off. Come on,
good idea. That's a great idea. I agree.
Well, Julie, so for our listeners out there that have questions or would like to learn more about your practice or learn more about reverse mentoring, so how did they get a hold of you?
Probably the easiest thing is my website is Jane Noonan, Noonan, consulting.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I'm on LinkedIn. So link in with me.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the conversation today. It's just been lovely. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it very
Yeah,
much.
real pleasure, Julie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Sam.
And you enjoy that RV. I'm thinking of you.
Totally.
That's right. You're a brave woman. You're gonna hit the road and enjoy that time. I mean, we live in such a beautiful country. I mean, there's so much to see in the United States, and so I'm glad you're taking that step.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Yes, enjoy. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on the People Strategy Forum, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.